at least under the playfield of the actuating chest mod. This is pretty much how you should receive it. The optional piece would be this right here. That's the 4-button controller for the lighting mod. So if you don't have the lighting mod, you won't have that. If you do have the lighting mod, that's going to install on the controller right in those 4 pins, right, or those 4 sockets right there. The 4 pins match right up to that. The buttons face towards the Arduino. So you can see there are 4 buttons on there, and those are going to face inward. Right, so you just slide that in there, those 4 pins, push it all the way down, try not to bend it. The components of this are the Arduino, that's this controller here, and that is attached to the chest mod bracket with a zip tie. There's a switch, a micro switch, that's also attached to the bracket and will already be plugged in for you. And there's a servo that has a quick connect connection on one of the legs, right there. And that's going to take a hex wrench to adjust that. What you have here is the optional lighting plug. That will only be in use if you have the lighting mod, but everybody will have the plug in case they want to update to it later. If you are not using that, you can zip tie it off to the side or just let it dangle. Nothing bad will happen. The other piece that's dangling off the end is the power connector. That's going to go right in line with a very similar looking plug and socket that is already on your machine. So we're just going to tap into that power. So this whole thing is going to mount right onto the bracket that holds up the chest mechanism. So we'll skip right over to that real quick. So now that you've lifted up the playfield, this is what you're looking at underneath that holds up the chest mechanism. So this bracket that we're providing you, that Pinball has, or Pinball J, sorry, has created, basically just slides over this whole contraption, and it fits right in between everything. So if you're careful, you can just sort of slide it in between these wires and get it in there. Or what you may want to do is remove this bundle right here and hold it off to the side, and maybe just sort of pull some of these cords back out of the way. And then this guy slides on with the servo facing the left side, the controller facing the right, and the switch facing towards the upper part of the playfield. And that little piece will just dangle for right now. So I'll slide it on here, sort of move the wires out of the way, and it fits right in between these 2 sets of nuts. And it just slides down over everything. That switch that we were looking at earlier is right up against that bracket. I don't know if you can really get in there and see it. Let's zoom in. That white little nub right there that my thumb's pointing at is one of the nubs that will run up against that switch and actuate the chest. Let's see what I can do about getting in there. There we go. Those out of the way. So you can see the leaf of that switch, the metal tang, is getting hit by that white nylon runner there. And that is the connection point to tell the system that the chest is either up or down. So this whole piece needs to be securely pushed down and lined up. The way you're lining it up are the 2 holes on either side. Behind these wires here, there are 2 holes, and on the other side there are 2 matching holes. And if we look through those holes, come on, focus. There we go. If you look in between those holes, you'll see that there are matching holes on the side of that metal bracket. So you're just going to line those up. The adjustment point here basically is this little leaf switch, whether or not it needs to be bent when this is down. We'll have it bent just a bit for you already to sort of match up. Basically, when that goes up as the forks are raised, this should be out. When they come back down, which I have to release them now, this nylon bushing should push this switch closed. Click. In this case, it's not doing it because it's not bent out enough. So what I would do is I'd take this bracket off, push the switch closed in your hands, and use needle nose pliers while you're holding the switch closed to adjust that tang out more. So we'll look at that right now. So here's that switch we were just looking at, and this is before it's bent at all. We're going to provide it to you bent a little bit. This is what it looks like bent more appropriately. You can see about halfway down it has maybe a 10 or 20 degree curve, and it's really not that precise. The switch is not that precise in the way it actuates, and this tang can bend a little bit. So basically what you're looking for is for that click to happen when the nylon piece hits it, and for it to let go when it doesn't. So the adjustment is really just bending this tang out a little bit or back in. Make sure when you bend it, you hold the switch closed with one hand and then use the pliers at the fulcrum wherever you want to bend it and bend it up or down. If you bend it without holding it, it'll probably just pop that tang right off or break it. So hold on to that. And now we're going to look at the linkage between the servo and the lid. And this is that metal rod that you have in your kit. One end has a threaded end with a nut on it. The other end is smooth. What happens is that rod basically slides down through this hole that's in the lid bracket. When that slides through, the nut gets captured on the top, and this bottom end is what's going to go down through the play field and attach to this bushing, this quick connect on the servo. So what happens is, I'll give you an idea just here on the table, is there is a hole in this bushing which spins freely, and there's a hex screw on the end which screws in and out and tightens the linkage. So you're going to take that linkage that comes down through the playfield and insert it into this quick link like that, and I need to loosen that up a hair. So that will slide into there, and you'll be able to use this as an adjustment mechanism for how much the lid is closed or open. Basically, you're going to need to align this so that when the servo is closed in the resting position, which is where it should be when you first install it, then this linkage is keeping the lid closed. And when it's actuated, it's pushing the lid open. And what you'll do to adjust it is simply loosen that screw, slide it in or out more, and then tighten that screw back up. This linkage won't be installed when you get it. This screw will be tightened down so it stays in there. You'll just loosen that up, slide the linkage through from the top of the playfield. And so really you have several points of adjustment as we talked about. You have the lid adjustment to align it left and right, forward and back, and you have the linkage adjustment to adjust how the lid is open and closed in those positions, and you have the switch adjustment which triggers whether when the whole thing activates, so when the lid is closed or open, the forks are up and down as to whether the lid is closed or open. So basically the next step is actually just putting all this together. I just wanted to give you an overview of all the pieces.